Alright chat, so you're thinking about water cooling your PC? Big step. It's taking your current cooling situation, whether it's an air cooler or an all-in-one cooler, to actual water cooling. A little scary, but don't worry, I've got you covered in this video. Let's try to simplify things and make it as easy as possible, from installing the water blocks, the reservoir or pump, and of course building the whole PC from scratch. And speaking of easy, meet the Phanteks Easy Fit Water Cooling Kit. It's here for beginners like you and I to make your water cooling dreams into reality. Let's start with the kit itself. Included in the kit is the CPU block, the D5 pump reservoir, the 360mm radiator, a pack of D30 120mm fans, hard tubes, soft tubing, bending tools, the tube cutter, the rubber snake for hard tubes, and the squirt bottle for your coolant. Everything you need to start water cooling your PC. Minus the coolant, of course, because you get to choose the color of the coolant. I'm gonna be honest, this is not my first time water cooling a PC. However, this is my very first time without any help, because the one who taught me was Hardline Nexus, aka Harji. Shameless plug somewhere here. Harji taught me the basics, and we only water cool the CPU block, which is more than enough knowledge and experience we need to water cool the whole PC. The thing I struggled most was installing the GPU water block that Phanteks was so kind of throwing as well. So we're not just water cooling the CPU, we're adding the GPU into the custom loop as well. But why stop there? We also have an extra radiator to add onto the custom loop as well, for extra cooling of course. So before building the PC, the first thing I have to do is install the water block on the GPU. And mind you, I've never done this before. So thankfully, Phanteks has a super easy manual for dummies. Me, I'm the dummy. Step-by-step instructions on how to install the GPU water block. And I think the hardest part was actually getting over the hurdle of taking apart a $1,200 graphics card. Yes, let's say that again. This GPU is $1,200, which is nerve-wracking because I'm literally taking it apart and I've never done this before. Haven't mentioned that? And not only that, in the grand scheme of it all, I'm actually mixing water, a liquid, and electricity. The PC runs on constant electricity. Those are not supposed to mix at all. Please don't mind me yapping as I install the GPU block. Again, huge shout out to Phanteks for providing a step-by-step manual that was super easy to follow. So as you can see, during the process, I was gentle and I was precise with all of my actions. And I made sure that all of the thermal pads were installed on the exact position on the PCB of the GPU, and made sure that all the thermal pads were perfectly aligned along with the perfect size. Because the last thing I want is to have a thermal pad that's a little too short or a little too long, and all of a sudden it's not getting enough cooling throughout the whole PCB. So I was triple checking, maybe even quadruple checking that super easy manual to read. I took my time doing this, which is a good lesson in itself when you're about to water cool your PC. Because first off, don't be afraid to take breaks. We are human beings, which means we are bound to make mistakes. Even though this process may be one of the easiest things to do in the grand scheme of it all, I was doing this for the first time and having an internal battle to keep my composure. Bottom line is, I successfully installed the GPU block, and it was a lot easier than I thought. Probably overthinking was the real villain here. Now we can get straight into building the PC the traditional way. We always begin the PC build with the motherboard, and I want to take this time to thank Asus for sending over their new motherboard line, the ROG Strix X870A Gaming Wi-Fi motherboard. Perfect for this build because it supports the new AMD 9000 series, PCIe 5.0 ready, and basically future-proofing everything, supporting all the new tech in the upcoming year. Also, it has a white and silver aesthetic that matches this PC build so well. So again, thank you Asus. Time to install the AMD Ryzen 9 9950X processor, courtesy of Phanteks. So again, thank you Phanteks for sending, I want to say 90% of this build. You guys are the goats. I'm actually switching over from Intel, and after the hiccups around the 13th and 14th gen Intel processor chips, I'm curious to see what the performance is like on the new AMD processors today. It's been a couple years since I've worked and gamed on an AMD build, so I'm super excited to check that out. Next, we install the 4 sticks of DDR5 RAM. It's a pretty easy process. And lastly, the SSD. And I'm actually using my current SSD. I'm just transferring from my old build to now this build. I've already moved all my personal files in an external hard drive, wipe this one clean, start fresh. The case we'll be installing this build into is the Phanteks NV7 full ATX tower in white. All the glass panels come out, and the design of this case is quite intricate in terms of cable management and airflow. And if you're into RGB, this case has RGB strips on the interior outlining of the motherboard. And yes, it's addressable, so it's customizable. A couple highlighted things about this case too. It does have a lot of support for cable managing. In the back panel, and for the input-output panel as well. So we're not supposed to see any wires at all bleeding from the back of the case. The next step is to install the Glacier Easy Fit CPU block, and I believe this is the right time to explain the fittings Phanteks has installed on these water blocks. So Phanteks does not use the traditional fittings other brands use. Phanteks utilizes the shark bite mechanism, and it's supposed to make installing tubes easy, hence the name, Easy Fit. How the shark bite mechanism works is that you push down on the outer rim of the fitting and you insert the tube easily. Once the tube is snug, you release the outer rim and the shark bite clamps down on the tube, and now it's leak-free and hassle-free. And if you decide to use the soft tubing, there's these plastic inserts needed to be used at the end of each soft tube because the plastic inserts keep the integrity of the tube. The shark bite mechanism has to bite down on something, so the plastic inserts allow the soft tubes from caving in and preventing from coolant from leaking out. Overall, a pretty interesting design. So we installed the motherboard into the case, and it's time to install the radiators on the top panel of the PC and the side panel. After figuring out the intake and the exhaust orientation of the fans, it's time to really plan out the custom loop. And we have to see what makes sense for this build. I know well enough the pump has to be mounted in the back of this case, because I do want the focal point of the PC to be focused around the motherboard. I also want the tubes to be shown, mainly because I want to display my master craftsmanship after bending the tubes. So it does make sense for me to mount the pump towards the back of the PC. And unfortunately, I got sick during this process, and I failed to film the installation of the tubes. However, this part of the video, I do want to teach you guys the proper way to bend a tube. And here are the tools we'll be using. 60mm acrylic tubes, some heat, which is from the heat gun, stencils, and this rubber snake. Once you have all those, which is included in the Easy Fit water cooling kit, you're ready to bend the tube. Insert the rubber snake into the tube. Why is this needed? You want to keep the integrity of the passage on the inside. Think of bending a straw. It gets flat when you bend it. The rubber snake prevents that. Put some heat onto it. Low heat recommended because if it's too high, the outside will burn and look like this. Distribute the heat equally and do this rotisserie technique. If it's not heated equally, your bend will have a crinkle just like this. But you'll know you did it right when there are no blemishes at all and your bend is just as you envisioned it. With some practice, you can now custom loop your PC completely. Now that I completed bending my tubes, I installed them. Again, I failed to capture the content here, but the moment of truth is seeing if your loop has any leaks. Off camera, I leak tested it, and it turned out fine. So it's time to put the blue coolant that I got from EKWB. Let's get it. I think it turned out nice. It took a whole week to build this PC, and the reason for that was because I wanted every step of the way to be the right one. Kind of like a perfectionist, but actually getting something done, right? Just kidding. I've learned a lot using the Phanteks Easy Fit DIY water cooling kit, and I loved how easy it really was to install it in your PC. Now, a couple of tips before closing out this video. If you choose to use this kit on your build, my first tip is to watch tutorials on water cooling. You have to understand the concept of it, and planning out the whole loop, the custom loop, is slept on. I think more builders need to emphasize the planning part of the build, because installing and uninstalling parts due to lack of planning wastes a lot of time, energy, confidence, you name it. So taking the time to really plan out your custom loop can save a lot of stress. Second, take breaks. Building something like this takes time, and using that to your advantage can really help the overall quality of your build. I wouldn't rush to get something like this done. I mean, you may have the skill set and patience to do so, but if you're a beginner, I would not recommend trying to finish this whole thing in one day. Lastly, if you're going to water cool a PC, I do recommend spending the extra dollar for quality parts. For example, companies will not make a water block for low-end graphics cards. They start making it for higher-end GPUs like the 4080, 4080 Ti, 4090, etc. First, you have to understand how expensive water cooling a build really is. And you do have to take this part of the building process seriously. And I'm grateful to have sponsors like Phanteks, so I have the luxury to actually show you guys what I can do with these parts. Okay, so lastly, last tip again, water cooling is expensive. Don't be surprised. All right, Phanteks, thank you so much for sponsoring this video. I love the Easy Fit water cooling kit. It's user-friendly, noob-friendly, and gets straight to the point. Viewers, thank you for watching this video. If you would like to see more videos just like this one, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell notification. It means the world to me and overall helps out my small channel. Help your boys' dreams come true. All right, see ya.